Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the Myka Stauffer situation. So just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. So Myka Stauffer is a 32-year-old YouTube content creator and social influencer who runs a lifestyle family channel, and it seems like she gets help occasionally from her husband, James. She has over 700,000 subscribers on her main YouTube channel. I believe she has some other channels as well. I think her husband, James, has a channel unrelated to what she does there. She has 4 biological children, and she had 1 adopted child from China. His name is Huxley, and at the time of making this video, he is 4.5 years old. Evidently, she adopted him in 2017, but then in 2020, Myka arranged for Huxley to go to another family. Evidently, he has autism spectrum disorder and is nonverbal. He also has other conditions as well. This situation has caused a significant amount of controversy. We see that Myka has experienced a good deal of backlash and lost a number of her sponsors. Critics have called her maneuver here rehoming. That's typically reserved for, like, pets. They've also referred to it as downsizing and right-sizing. Usually that has to deal with companies that are firing employees, but either way, I can see that the idea here is that she had this child and she moved him somewhere else. Technically, what she did is referred to as adoption dissolution, which can be distinguished from adoption disruption. An adoption disruption occurs when an adoption ends prior to a legal finalization, and dissolution occurs when it ends after it's already finalized. Disruption occurs in 10 to 25% of all adoptions. Dissolution occurs in 1 to 10%. So we see dissolution is much less likely to occur than disruption. Now, to give this situation some context, I want to talk a little about the risk factors for disruption and dissolution. Adopted children, in general, are at twice the risk as compared to their general population peers to have behavioral or conduct problems, special health needs, and depression or ADHD. Dissolution happens for a variety of reasons. There are certain factors that increase the risk of dissolution. The greatest factor by far is age. If somebody is above 3, they're at a substantially higher risk. The next highest risk factor is the presence of special needs, especially those that involve externalizing behavior. So like acting out and hitting other children, hitting pets, destroying inanimate objects, something like that, something where the behavior is visible and potentially harmful. So we see that Huxley is in 2 of these high-risk categories. Another significant risk factor is a lack of resources, but it appears that this couple has access to sufficient resources to raise Huxley. There's no way to read Myka's mind and know what she was intending. What was the real reason she gave up Huxley? The real reason could have been just what she stated. Now, she and her husband did create this update video, and she made a few posts on social media, which list a number of reasons. Here are the essential points. Raising Huxley was difficult. They were not aware of all of his special needs. It seems like they're suggesting they may have been misled about some of those needs. In a prior video, she indicated that a physician did warn them that Huxley's conditions were severe, and they recommended that she rethink her decision to adopt. She claimed that this message went in one ear and out the other. Next point, Huxley did not interact well with the other children. They referred to scary incidents, but they didn't really supply any details behind this. They said they really tried to make this work. They were dedicated parents. They invested a lot of energy. They said that medical professionals have told them that it's time to give up Huxley, kind of making it seem like they wanted to keep him, but they didn't want to ignore the medical professionals. Interestingly, as I mentioned, Myka seems to have ignored that other physician, but I guess now she doesn't want to do that. She said that Huxley indicated through nonverbal communication that he would be happier living with other people. So it sounds like other people were at their home, and Huxley was expressing emotions through this nonverbal communication. And somehow she took this to mean specifically he wanted to leave their care and go to these other people. Myka said that Huxley is thriving with his new family in his forever home. Now, we see other people who have indicated that Huxley's actually in the foster care system and he's not been adopted by another family. I'm not really sure what's happening here. Now, we also see Myka says that the new mommy, as she called her, has medical training which makes her a much more suitable caregiver for Huxley. I find this interesting because Myka is a registered nurse. It would be more helpful if she could have explained what exact medical training she lacks. Is this training something that she could not engage in? Something she could not learn? It doesn't make a lot of sense how this other caregiver could be that vastly superior. So what's going on in a situation like this? Well, of course, I can't speak specifically to whatever Myka did, but in general, there are a few possibilities. One that comes to mind, of course, is narcissism. I think this is always the danger with social influencers, people that offer different suggestions about a multitude of topics like parenting, homeschooling, or whatever they believe they know something about. Essentially, though, much of the content is simply them sharing their lives with other people. And of course, they're going to be selective about what they show. They're only going to share what they want to share. They're going to share that which makes them look better, at least most of the time. This creates a pressure on them to seem perfect. It is challenging to raise a child with special needs, particularly if there are behavioral problems. But Myka was fully aware of these before making the decision to adopt. According to what she said, again, she ignored the advice of a physician and went forward with the adoption. Now, her revenue went up quite a bit after the adoption process started, making someone wonder if this wasn't done, at least in part, to increase the popularity of her social media presence. It's interesting that in 2018, we see this post by Myka to an adoption agency. She wrote, "What special needs would you consider minor or relatively easy to manage that most people wouldn't consider easy?" It's not hard here to make the connection that she wanted to create favorable optics. What would be an easy way for me to appear as a hero? It does seem as though this couple was trying to protect their image. They didn't want to talk about Huxley's disappearance until people noticed he was missing. Then they provide essentially no helpful information, citing a concern for privacy. So now privacy is something they're worried about. Before, it didn't seem like that was a concern at all. With narcissism, there's a tendency to treat human beings like objects or animals. Was a calculation made here that Huxley was no longer valuable commercially, like he couldn't earn the same amount of revenue now? So it's like they may have been treating him like a puppy. He grew up a little, and he was no longer cute or useful. There's a tendency with narcissism to get excited by people who are new and bored with people who are not, and a tendency to be overconfident about one's abilities. It seems likely that when they first adopted, they believed they would be successful. I don't imagine they got into this thinking this would be the end result. Evidently, even though they were struggling with raising Huxley, that didn't prevent Myka from promoting herself as an advocate for international adoption. This helped increase her exposure because she was featured in a few magazines. I wonder why she didn't simply represent herself as someone who was struggling. That would have been much more honest. Instead, she sounded highly confident. For example, in reference to the topic of international adoption, she said, "It's not easy. You will second-guess yourself, but you will get through it. And never imagine your life without that child." She said, "My husband and I are better parents to all of our children because of it." I'm not sure what she meant by the word never. Perhaps the word she was looking for was definitely. Also, in saying that they are better parents now, if this is better, what were they like before? Now, two other items here. The first is about that update video. Myka asked herself if she felt like she was a failure as a mom. Her answer was 500%. The question wasn't, did she fail as a mathematician? I already knew the answer to that question. The second has to do with the consequences of imprecise language. In that video, she said that it really hurts when people make insidious, hurtful comments. Well, insidious means destructive in a subtle way. So is she asking for blatant, hurtful comments? I don't think that's what she wants either. This type of language seems to be common in her videos. Now, social influencers are often thought of as trendsetters. So is this a new trend? Are we going to see adoption dissolution become normalized, become popular? In 2008, we see the safe haven law takes effect in Nebraska. This law allowed any child to be surrendered at a hospital in Nebraska without any questions and without legal consequence. Initially, there was no age limit as to the child who could be surrendered. Within a few weeks, 36 children from across the United States were left at Nebraska hospital emergency rooms, none of whom were infants. This law was quickly changed to have a 30-day limit. The children had to be 30 days old or younger. This is a worrisome trend, to think that 36 children would be turned in after a few weeks based on what was probably considered by most an obscure law. Yet people made their way from all different areas of the United States, almost like they were waiting for some state to pass a law without thinking it through. Here's my chance to abandon my child. So Myka Stauffer isn't alone. The difference with her is that she's a public figure, so everybody knows what she did. Fortunately, most people are not social influencers, but unfortunately, narcissism is on the rise. Here we see more evidence that the threat of narcissism needs to be taken seriously. I've noticed that this story has had a strong effect on a lot of people, and I think this goes far beyond the potential narcissism angle. I think a lot of it has to do with empathy for Huxley. It seems as though his needs will be cared for in the long run, at least I hope that's true. But what's left here is this sense of rejection, which he may or may not understand now, but it seems very likely in the future he could understand the situation. It's very troubling to think of him contemplating how he was adopted, used in all this social media, used to promote his adoptive mother to hero status, then given away. Rejection is one of the risks of adoption, but being used first is not a normal risk, and it's not acceptable. It really makes me question this drive that so many people have to include their children in their social media products. I think a much safer policy, for the children at least, would be to leave them out of it, right? Just leave them out of all of the money-making and kind of narcissistic drives. If people want to pursue grandiosity, they can do it without using their children. It just seems like a line needs to be drawn there. We need to say, okay, there are certain types of situations that we can involve with social media, and there's other types of situations that remain safe, that remain protected. The use of children like this makes them vulnerable now and vulnerable to, again, kind of processing feelings of rejection later on. This isn't healthy, and I think this is a type of situation where people really need to consider their motives and, more importantly, what's best for the children. I know whenever I talk about topics like this, there will be a variety of opinions. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.